without further ado, how to conduct your China digital audit. So first, a bit about myself. I'm Thomas. I'm co-founder of WeChat, which is an agency which is helping companies outside China sell to China via social networks. We've been doing that for about 5 years now, and we are working with very large companies, also very small companies, to help them use social media in China, WeChat, but now also some other platforms like Douyin, Little Redbook, and others. And before that, I was doing some stuff. It's kind of boring, so I'm not gonna tell you about it. So the first question we're gonna answer is, what is a digital audit? What is the point of this conversation? And then we'll dive right in. We look at how to look into the brand performance on marketplaces. We look at WeChat, how to see mentions and visibility. We look at the tools you can use in order to get some data on Little Redbook, Xiaohongshu. We look at short video platforms, Douyin and Kuaishou. And we look at very quickly Weibo and search engine visibility, in particular Baidu, what kind of data you can get from the freely available tools. And then we'll have just one slide to talk about how to interpret these results in terms of what is the right channel for your brand. So really trying to keep it simple. And then I will briefly conclude by summarizing everything I said before. So the first question is, why do you want to do a digital audit, and what is a digital audit? So digital audit means usually 3 things. One is analyzing your brand footprint in China. So trying to figure out what is the current social presence and e-commerce presence of your brand in China. And you might have a lot of e-commerce presence even if you did nothing for China, because you have a lot of people reselling products C2C, customer to customer in China. So some brands have 0 activity and then millions of dollars of sales. So this is something you want to measure. Depending on whether you have 0, $50,000 per year or millions of dollars per year of resellers selling your product in China makes a huge difference in terms of the strategy you're going to adopt. Seeing how your competitors are doing, of course. If you look at their performance, it will also help you to see what are they doing wrong or right, and give you some ideas about your own launch in China. And channel selection. Once you have all of this data, it will tell you where should you get started. Should you get started on WeChat, on Tmall, on other social networks? And we'll see a bit how the data can impact this kind of choices. So let's dive right in and talk about marketplaces digital audit. So in order to figure out which marketplace to look at, first we need to have a brief discussion about what is the market share of different marketplaces in China. So as you might know, in China, people don't really buy on the website of brands. They don't buy on the .com or .cn of brands. They buy either on marketplaces or through social media like WeChat, live streaming on Douyin or short video platforms and this kind of stuff. So marketplaces play a very big role in the ecosystem, much bigger than in the West, because people are not going to go on the Shopify site of the brand to buy. They will buy either through social, either through marketplaces. And as far as marketplaces go, for B2C e-commerce, Tmall is definitely the uncontested leader. They have more than 60% of market share. So they basically dominate the market. So we'll spend more time today talking about Tmall for the reasons that they dominate the market. Also for another reason is that they actually provide much more transparent data. So this is a very good situation to be in, because the main player is the one which is easier to get data from. The second biggest player is JD with around 24% of market share. And then we have some much smaller players like Suning and Weipinghui. We'll really briefly talk about them at the end of this section. So as I said, as far as marketplaces go, Taobao, Tmall are the most transparent. So Taobao, Tmall, as you might know, belong to the same company, Alibaba. Taobao is more of the customer-to-customer version of the platform. Tmall is a B2C version of the platform where brands have their flagship stores. In practice, most of the customers buy everything from the Taobao app, which gives access to all of the stores. They give access to the C2C stores and the B2C stores, and the Tmall stores are ranked in priority on the Taobao app. So usually when we want to get data, we look at Taobao because this gives us access to everything. And if you look at Taobao, indeed, you will see that for each product, you will see the price of a product being listed, the number of orders during the last 30 days, the shipping origin where the product is being shipped from, and on which platform it's sold. It can be sold on Taobao, Taobao Worldwide, which is basically the version of Taobao which is meant for individuals shipping outside of China, Tmall, which is for companies, and Tmall Global, which is for companies shipping outside of China. So already by looking at this, this is the first thing you should do if you want to assess the potential of your brand, because chances are the number might be 0. You might have a few resellers which are maybe listing the product and 0 sales. So this is the first thing to look at, so you know if there is any reason to dig deeper. It's the fastest way. You just go on Taobao.com and check out the data. It might be that you can see some figures, some sales, and like is the case for this one of our clients here, Manu Atelier, and you want to dig deeper into the data. In which case there are a lot of tools which exist. I selected a few here to introduce to you today. So one I really like to use because it's free and it gives access to a lot of data. A lot of these tools, if you want to use them, they ask you to pay, and they ask you to pay per store or per keyword. So it can get really expensive very fast. So it's nice to have a tool which is free because it will give you a lot of power to do a lot of quick search without having to pay anybody for it. So Dianchacha is very good for that. It gives you a very powerful way to benchmark. The only problem is that they only have 30 days of data. You can't actually buy more data from them. They don't keep any historical data for you to purchase. But they are perfect if you simply want to get some very, very quick data about the current trend and compare yourself with competitors. You just go on dianchacha.com and you go on the keyword search in order to search. A lot of the tools that I mentioned today, they are only available in Chinese, but if you just use Google Translate on the page, they become very easy to navigate. So the language barrier exists. There are some weird denominations. For instance, the name for product on Taobao is Baobei, and so it's translated to baby name. Obviously, nobody is selling babies on Taobao. A lot of things are being sold on Taobao, but I don't think any babies. So there are a few weird translations when you use Google Translate, but it should still be very easy for you to navigate. So you can do this. If you use a free version, you can't export the data, but you can very easily copy paste it into an Excel and use it to get free data about the last 30 days of sales of you or your competitors. It's easy, it's free, and it's quite efficient. So this is what I use the most, I think, when I want to get a bit more fine-grained data about Taobao sales. If you want to deep dive, you already used Dianchacha, but you want to see some broader trend and you want to see historical data, because the problem with having only the last 30 days of data, especially in China, is that sales in China are extremely seasonal and revolve a lot around sales festivals. So if you, for instance, are checking data in December or November or June, or March, because each of these you have a sales festival, your data is going to be very much impacted by the fact that you're seeing only the last 30 days, and you will see a big spike of data, which does not necessarily represent the sales of the brand, and it will also be heavily impacted by the discounting practice of the brand. If you have a brand which is really heavily relying on discounts, they will have big peaks during sales festivals, and they will have a big decrease of sales, and it will be harder for you to assess exactly how they're performing. Same for resellers, actually, because resellers will also buy from the brand during these discounts, if there are some discounts outside China, and then resell on Taobao. So this is all going to be connected. So if you want to see a bit of a broader perspective of what's going on in terms of sales, you can use Canada data. So there are a lot of providers of Taobao Tmall data that you can contact. This is the one I use personally because the data is pretty accurate. I would say around 90% accurate. And they are also really cheap, around $1 per month and per store or keyword of data. So it does add up if you want to get a lot of data about a lot of competitors on a regular basis. But if you're just looking to do a quick competitor analysis of your brand and your main competitors over the last year or the last couple of years, and you have 5 or 10 competitors to check, it's actually pretty affordable, and it will give you some interesting insights in terms of how your competitors have been evolving and how your brands has been performing in terms of resellers. Are you at the beginning of the trend, at the top of the hype, or already past your prime? It will be very interesting for you to see. So I recommend them. The only issue with them is that I don't think they speak much English. So you might need to have a Chinese colleague reach out to them in order to access the data, and they will take a bit of time to prepare it because they will take some time to format the data and send it to you. Usually it takes them a couple of days to collect the data, format it, depending on the amount of data you require. I would also encourage you to look into the reviews. Once again, it's not a problem if you don't speak Chinese. As you look at Taobao, I would recommend that you check the reviews for the products. It will give you a good sense of the interest for your brand. You can use Google Translate to create translations and to see if there is any shortcomings in terms of things that people like or dislike about your brand. And it is kind of a free market study that you can get. Yeah, you can do that very, very easily by using Google Translate on a few of the products to get a sense of the reviews you're getting. Before I finish talking about marketplaces, I want to talk about the other marketplaces beside Taobao and Tmall. So these marketplaces are, as I said, smaller than Tmall, and they provide much less data. So the problem is that the ones which are most similar to Tmall in terms of positioning, like JD, Kaolan is part of Tmall, or Weipianhui, only provide comments. So you can see the number of comments, but you can't see any information about the monthly sales, which makes it very, very hard to really compare and assess the popularity of the product, because the number of comments also depends on when the product was listed. And you might have a lot of fake comments. It's easier to make fake comments than to make fake sales on the long run. Because then you would have to keep making fake sales all the time, while for comments, you can create some fake orders in the beginning and then get a lot of comments and then let the organic take over. The other platforms like Suning or Pinduoduo, they actually give information about sales, but they're very niche platforms. Suning is really focused on electronics, and Pinduoduo on kind of cheap commodity goods. So having the sales data of Suning and Pinduoduo is not going to be very helpful for you because it's quite unlikely that your brand is being resold on any of these platforms, and it's quite unlikely that even your competitors are selling on either of these platforms, except if you're a very large electronic manufacturer, or if you're selling very cheap goods like napkins of fruits or really commoditized goods. So not very, very interesting. Moreover, the thing which really makes a difference with Taobao is that you can access C2C resellers information, which enables you to know the popularity of your brand even before you launch it, which is not the case for all of these platforms. All of these platforms are more focused on B2C. So it's good to know they exist. You can get some data from them, but I don't get here into the tools to get detailed data, because for most cases, you won't find this data very relevant or interesting, because either it's incomplete, you only have access to comments, or it's irrelevant because the industries where they operate are too niche. So quick, yeah, so some of these asking if these tools work outside of China. Yes, they work outside of China. They can be a bit slow, but all of these tools can be used outside of China with Google Translate. So this was quickly for the marketplaces. And now I'm going to move on to the social audits. So once you have done your marketplace audit, you know whether or not you have sales. How do you know if people are talking about you in China? Usually, your brand will have to be very, very popular to get sales, but you might already get a lot of more information by seeing if you get mentions in China. So usually you want to first check if you get sales. If you get sales, most likely you also have mentions. If you don't have sales, then you want to look a bit deeper and see whether or not people are talking about you, even if they're not selling and buying the product yet. So WeChat, I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing it. It's the largest social network in China, 1.2 billion monthly active users, 1 million WeChat mini programs that people can use in order to buy and sell products, 82 minutes per day spent on the app, so very, very high level of engagement. It's an ecosystem of services where people can use it for messaging, for social, for sharing, for payments. Brands can create accounts in order to promote their products to their followers. And WeChat influencers can be used as brand advocates and can lead to very high return on investment if you use them for marketing. And they also have an advertising system kind of similar to Facebook ads system. So if you want to get information about WeChat, the simplest way to get started, for most of the tools, I will first introduce the native tools for search inside the tool before I show some additional platforms you can use to get more data. You can just use the search feature inside WeChat, and then you can filter to get the latest articles. You can sort them by post date or by number of views, and it's completely free. And you're also gonna have the full list of the posts which are mentioning a specific brand. The problem with that is that it's not really easy to count mentions or data in this format, because you would have to scroll, count the posts manually and open them manually, which takes a lot of time. So another alternative to that, still in the free tools, kind of native tools, is to use a search engine called Sogo. So Sogo is a search engine which receives some investment from Tencent, the company which owns WeChat. So they have very good integration with WeChat. And the interesting thing is that by using Sogo, you can much more easily count the mentions, especially if you use the desktop version. And if you have a lot of mentions, you can enter the keyword of the brand, and then you can just see the number of pages which are available. In this case, for instance, for one of our clients, Botkia, you have 378 pages of results. So we know we have around 3,800 mentions from the brand, which would have been very, very fastidious if we had to count it from the WeChat interface. And it's still a very exhaustive list. So you have all of the mentions, historical mentions. You can filter this by the different periods of time. It's completely free, very easy to count. The only issue is that it lacks some more advanced filters or ability to export the data. But it's a very good solution if you want to get a fast answer as how many mentions do you have on the WeChat platform. Once you want to go a level deeper, then you will want to look at paid platforms, which will give you a much more fine-grained list of the different mentions and ability to export data easily. So the definitely leader in the market is NewRank. By the way, I'm obviously not affiliated with any of the tools I mentioned today. So sometimes I mention the pricing, sometimes I don't. But these are just tools we use. So I just give you a sense of basically how they work, what they provide, and it's up to you to make your buying decisions, but there is no tracking link or anything. I'm not getting any affiliate sales from this. So as I said, NewRank is much more exhaustive in terms of data. It has some very advanced filters. It's very easy to count and to export the data. The problem is that if you want to get data above 30 days or export any of the data, then you will have to pay a very expensive subscription of around $700 US per month. in order to get all of this data. So that's why the free alternatives, as I mentioned earlier, are quite useful because this platform, which is definitely the most advanced and which has the best quality data in terms of WeChat data, is also quite pricey. Another tool I want to mention when it comes to WeChat is the WeChat Index. So I actually forgot to put the mini program, the QR code of this mini program, but I will add it before I send the slides, so you'll have it in the email. But the WeChat Index is a mini program which enables you to get a trend of mentions on the WeChat ecosystem, very similar to what you could do with the Google Index. So the pros of this tool is that it takes into account the entire WeChat ecosystem. It's more accurate than just looking at mentions. It enables you to do very easy side-by-side comparison of how mentions of brand have been evolving over time. The main problem with it, there are two main issues. One is that it doesn't give you any objective data. It's just an index, so it's just an overall measure of how much a brand has been mentioned on the overall WeChat ecosystem, but it's up to WeChat to decide how they calculate this index, and they don't tell us how they do it. So it's a very subjective measure and not easy to analyze. And through this index, you can only access the last 90 days of data, which is kind of limited. I'm just gonna check quickly if there are any questions. So Careless Testing, are there any tools like Dentatra or Candata to analyze marketing investments in the marketplace? That would be useful for checking what kind of promotional actions are the competitors doing. Yeah, actually, some of these tools do provide some of this data, including Dentatra, I think. Also later, I will also mention some of the tools to look at the live streaming investment and returns on different platforms. So this will be mentioned later in the presentation as I'll talk about Douyin. So, but it is possible to see investment data, campaign data, and some return on investment data from some of these tools, although the data is not always 100% accurate. I'm going to check the chat because I see some people writing in the chat. And some people are asking about the name of the mini program, which for WeChat Index. It's I think it's Weixin Zhishu, but I will send the QR code in via email when I send the slides in a couple of days, so you'll have it. So I'm gonna move forward because as I said, I'm gonna try to keep this presentation short so we can spend a bit of time on questions also after the presentation. So the Little Redbook audit. So Little Redbook, as you might know, is a social commerce network. So it started as an app that people were using to talk about the places and the products they discovered when they were on holidays overseas outside of mainland China. And it grew into this network where people are sharing tips about products and a lot of product reviews. So it's used a lot for research. When people are doing research before buying a product, they want to buy a fashion item or cosmetic product, and they want to learn more about the product, they would go on Xiaohongshu. So there is an e-commerce interface to Xiaohongshu, to Little Redbook, but usually people will not buy directly on the app. They go there more to gather information, and then they will go to WeChat or Tmall in order to complete the purchase. So, and it's particularly efficient in cosmetics and fashion industries, mostly used by female users, 88%, so a lot of users in tier 1 cities. So very, very interesting tool for promotion. It's also likely to be the first tool where you get some mentions because it's used for this kind of product reviews. So the small influencers who first discover your product likely will talk about it first on Little Redbook. So as I said before, the simpler is always to use the search inside the app. So you can just write the name of any brand inside the app, and you will see the number of notes. So the posts on Xiaohongshu, on Little Redbook are called notes. That directly will display inside the mobile interface of the app. And if you then do the search, you will be able to see the number of likes from the top post. So this is quite a simple way to get a rough understanding of what is the appeal for the brand. Once again, if you see nothing, you see nothing. You can just move forward with your life. And if you see some data and you want to deep dive it a bit, then you can look at an app called Changhua, which gives you a lot of information actually on its free version. You can see the total number of notes mentioning the brand, the number of likes, and the number of notes from other business accounts mentioning your brand, the number of favorite people who are saving the brand as favorite, and the number of comments about the brand, and they give access to 1 year of data for free. So it's a pretty good platform, pretty good free tool, and gives you access to a lot without having to pay. So I really recommend it if you want to get a bit of a deep dive into your Little Redbook data. And if you want to get access to more data, you can go for the premium version. So once you're done with Little Redbook, you will want to start looking at some other apps like Douyin. So Douyin, I think I don't need to introduce it either. It's the Chinese version of TikTok, 400 million daily active users, mostly coming from large cities and young people. It's a really booming platform with very high engagement rates. And it also integrates with Taobao and Tmall. So it's being used a lot for live streaming campaigns. And you can use some of the tools we're going to mention in order to get a sense of the return from these live streaming campaigns. We wrote some articles about this, and we use some of this data. So as I said, very fast growing platform. It's kind of double its daily active users in a year. And so once again, simplest way to get started is you start inside the app. You can enter any kind of keyword, and you can get a full list of all the mentions of the brand, and you can sort it based on the latest post, on the number of likes. So as often when you do in-app search, the problem is that is how to get the aggregate number of mentions or likes. And the other issue with short video platforms is that because they're not text-based, if people did not explicitly put the hashtag for the brand, it's not going to appear. So only the bigger brands are really going to appear through this kind of search on Douyin or Kuaishou. This is a big downside. So the company I mentioned earlier, NewRank, also actually, which is the leading company for WeChat data, also has been investing a lot in Douyin data. So they have a tool that they call Sindo, which enables to do this kind of search. So the URL is inside this the slide. So it makes it easy to sort mentions, and you can filter through more dimensions like likes, shares, comments. The problem is that if you don't have the premium version, you can only get 30 days of data. And it's hard to get the aggregate number of mentions or likes if you don't have the premium versions, which enable you to export the data. As I said, overall, the number of mentions of Douyin is usually low, so it's only for relatively large brands that it's going to be relevant. This platform also gives you access to a lot of other data actually for free, at least for the latest data. So you can get access to the most popular Douyin challenges, because some brands are gonna give challenges for users to create their own videos about the brand in order to get rewards. So you can see which kind of challenges are functioning well and use that for benchmarking. You can see what are the most popular Douyin musics, so give you a sense of what kind of musics to use on your own videos. You can see ranking of KOLs by category if you want to pick KOLs for marketing, and most interestingly, you can see live streaming sales figures, and some of this data is free. That is the live streaming from the superstars. If you want to get some fine-grained data, then you will have to actually pay for the premium version. So if you have a free account, you will be able to get all of that, but only the very, very recent data. If you want to see more broader historical data, you have to go for a premium account. For the Douyin data, it's cheaper than the WeChat data. It's only only quote unquote $125 per month. So if you're really into this kind of research about Douyin and short video platforms, it can be worth to buy a month of data, in order to see what's going on. So as we're talking about Douyin, we have to talk about Kuaishou, which is the other very large short video platform. So Kuaishou, as you know, is very much the same as Douyin, very similar interface. Yeah, it's been growing also super fast, also doubling number of users in around a year to reach around 300 million daily active users. So same as before, in terms of looking for information on Kuaishou, you can simply enter the name of the brand on Kuaishou. You will see the full list of mentions, but it will be hard for you to get the aggregate numbers, and the overall number of mentions on Kuaishou is usually low for the same reasons as Douyin. It's not a text-based platform, so people might post a video and not actually write down the name of the brand if they don't hashtag it. So there is another platform which you can use in order to get data about Kuaishou, which is called Augua. So it can also give you the possibility to easily sort videos based on likes, comments, or views, access the data, and access the data of top performing influencers for benchmarking, including sales data. The problem is that you only have 15 days of data if you don't buy the premium version. It's hard to get the aggregate number of mentions or likes if you don't buy premium, because you won't be able to export the data easily. And as in the case for Douyin, the number of mentions for Kuaishou is relatively low. And I will finish with two platforms, Weibo and Baidu. So Weibo actually is quite simple. So Weibo, as you might know, is a kind of a mix between Twitter and Instagram. It has a very mobile and young user base. It's kind of past its prime. So a lot of people will say Weibo is dying, but it's still a very good platform to see mentions about brands, because still a lot of people use it. We don't use it so much anymore for marketing, except for very specific cases where we think it can be useful. But it's still a very good place to gather data, because it still has quite a bit of users, 500 million monthly active users and growing, so it's not to be discounted. And it's relatively transparent, and it's a platform that people use to follow brands and stars and things they're interested in. So it's really appropriate in terms of gathering data about a brand's popularity. So for Weibo, I think the simplest way is simply to use a Weibo desktop interface because it's easy access. It has a lot of very exhaustive data. You can filter for time and location, and it's really easy to count the mentions by just checking the number of pages in the results. And there are not so many tools existing to gather data about Weibo. I mean, there are some, but usually you have to pay for the data. It's not that convenient. So just using this is quite efficient and quite fast. And it has most of the main features you might want: easy to count, easy to filter, and full access to the data, and completely free. And the last tool I want to mention is the Baidu Index. So the Baidu Index is very similar to Google Index. It gives you a sense of popularity of a brand over time in terms of search volume. Baidu has quite a large market share, around 60% market share of the search engine market in China. So it's still quite relevant, but it's less relevant than Google would be, because a lot of people, when they look for stuff, go directly on Tmall. So it's not so much that they go on different search engine, also they do. The market share of Baidu is decreasing. But mostly if they're looking for products, they would go directly to Taobao, Tmall, JD, WeChat, but they would not necessarily go to Baidu. But still, it's a search engine that a lot of people are using. It has a very high volume of search, so the data is significant. So it's interesting because you can see data over a long period of time. Here on the graph, you can see that there is a big decrease of search for product during coronavirus crisis, and then you can see a steady recovery and data which comes back to normal level as of today. So it's interesting to see this kind of long-time trends. You can see a lot of years of data. You can easily compare the data between different brands. The main drawback is that it only gives relative measure of popularity, the Baidu Index. And also Baidu, as I said, is losing popularity over time. So it's becoming less and less relevant as time goes by. And before I close this talk, which as I expected is going to last a bit more than 40 minutes, I want to talk a bit about how do you draw conclusions then from this data. Once you've seen this data, how do you use it in order to make decisions? Because I spent some time doing consulting early in my career, I tend to create this kind of 2x2 matrices. It's kind of risk of doing consulting for too long. You start to make matrices and a lot of slides. So that's what I do. If you look at the number of sales mentions, you can use that as a way to kind of assess what to do. So if you have low sales, low mention, let's say if you have high sales, high mentions, then you can actually launching directly on Tmall, because it means your brand is already reselling like crazy from resellers. So let's say you have more than 50,000 or 100,000 US dollars per month of sales by resellers on Taobao, then you can definitely consider a direct launch on Tmall, because it means there is a lot of search traffic for your brand. It will be easy for you to find a good partner, a Tmall partner to launch, because Tmall partners, if they're high quality, will look for high quality brands. So if you have 0 mentions, you'll struggle to find a good partner, and you will be charged a lot also, because the Tmall partner will not be very confident in your success. But if you have a lot of C2C sales via Taobao, then you want to get started with Tmall right away. It will be bigger investment, but the risk is low, and you will use WeChat as a supporting channel in order to help you out. If you have no sales or very low sales, but a lot of mentions, then you will want to maybe wait a bit before you get started with Tmall, because it might be a bit more risky. So you might start with a WeChat store, seeding, so gifting products to influencers, plus some paid campaigns with influencers in order to drive sales. And as you keep iterating on this, building the momentum for the brand, then you will feel comfortable launching on Tmall, because you will have grown a social following on WeChat, on social platforms, and you will be more comfortable about the investment for Tmall, which is more significant. If you have 0 sales, very low number of mentions, then I would suggest to just do gifting, just do seeding of products. So gift your product to influencers, still set up a WeChat store so you can see if there is any appeal for the product, because people might search and buy. And some of our clients get really high number of sales just from seeding, like dozens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars per month, just from seeding, because the product is very popular, and the seeding is enough to create this kind of initial momentum. So it is possible to get started from just gifting without any paid campaigns. And the idea is that you're gonna move from the lower left corner to the top right corner, starting with seeding and setting up the WeChat store, starting to run some paid campaigns. And once you feel very confident, launching the Tmall store. If you're on the top left corner, then you're just weird. You're getting a lot of sales, but nobody's mentioning you. You're a magician. I don't know how you're doing that. So yeah, in this case, I'm not sure what you should do. Give me a call to explain to me what you're doing. I'd be interested. Concluding remarks. As I said, a proper digital audit is essential to prepare China launch. Don't go blind. Just try to figure out a bit what you're doing, what are your competitors doing, using all of the tools that we mentioned. It doesn't take so much time, so you might just spend a few days going through this platform, this data, putting all of that in an Excel to get a sense of what's going on. In most cases, a quick search on the platform is enough to get you a first sense of popularity, especially if you have no search and sales. In this case, it will be very easy to figure out what's happening. And as you want to dive in, a lot of the specialized data services have some free plans which enable you to get quite a lot of data. So I try to, obviously there's a lot of providers of data in China. I try to select the ones which provide quite a bit of data for free, and the ones which are more accurate and exhaustive in terms of data. And if you really want to deep dive, you can maybe get a paid membership for some of these services. Although, as I said, such depth is not necessarily necessary for most brands. And you might be okay with just a very quick search using the free versions of the platforms I mentioned. Brands with low sales should focus on social promotion via seeding and paid influencers, and with a WeChat store, so that you can know that if what you're doing is working or not before you invest in Tmall. And brands with high sales on Taobao to see resellers can consider a direct launch on Tmall. That's it for me. 43 minutes, pretty good. I'm gonna quickly see if there are some questions. So Jean-Pierre is asking, what is the magnitude of C2C versus B2C overall in China ecosystem? It's hard to exactly assess, but I used to calculate this for some very, very large brands. If a brand is very mature, the C2C might be very low. It might be around 30% or below, because the brand might really dominate as the platforms on Tmall, and might offer some competitive pricing, which is hard to match by C2C resellers. If the brand is new, then the C2C might be close to 100%, because there is no competing channel, and especially if the brand is not listed yet in China, then there will be a lot of pricing arbitrage from the Daigou, who will be able to have much cheaper prices than any reseller, which might be any official reseller on the platform. Ian Liu is asking if we have very limited resources, which are the major 3-5 channels to focus. I would say 3 channels: Taobao, WeChat, and Little Redbook, because Taobao really is an essential one to get sales. WeChat is a bigger one in terms of social. It still has by far the largest user base of 1.2 billion, so you can't discount it. And Little Redbook is perfect for measuring mentions. So it's really the one which is going to give you the more subtle signal, because your first mentions are likely to be on Little Redbook. And so it will also give you the most accurate data, because you will get a more statistical number of statistically significant number of mentions faster on Little Redbook. Is it a good strategy for cosmetics to start in Xiaohongshu to test the market before going to Tmall? Yes and no. So you want to use Xiaohongshu for seeding and talking about your product. As I said, people usually don't buy on Xiaohongshu. So you want to use either Xiaohongshu with a WeChat store or Xiaohongshu with a Tmall store, but you want to have another platform on top of Xiaohongshu in order to get some sales, because it will be much harder to convince people to buy on Xiaohongshu, because people just don't have this habit. So I would recommend, you can still set up the store on Xiaohongshu, but I would recommend a Xiaohongshu store plus WeChat store if you want to invest in a more modest way, and Xiaohongshu plus Tmall if you're more like, as I said, you already have some momentum and you want to get started. Olivier is asking, how do you start seeding? Do influencers directly sell for you, or do you ask people to come to your WeChat store? So seeding, usually you gift, so it's harder to get influencers to directly promote your product in China, but it's possible. So you usually gift to influencers. You wait to see whether or not they mention the product. If they do, then you would contact them for a paid collaboration, and you would usually try to take this paid collaboration to the WeChat store or to the Tmall store using a special discount. It's possible to get commission-based influencers in China. They're just hard to find, and usually either they're going to be very small influencers, so they're going to move low volumes, and they will require less commission, around maybe 20%, 15, 20%. Or they're gonna be much bigger influencers, but in this case, they will ask very high commission and discounts. They might ask you like 20% discount on the product plus 40% commission. So they will give you a lot of exposure because they're very big influencers, but they will really eat your margins because they will not do it unless you give them a lot of money plus a lot of discount for their followers. Christine is asking, when a brand has some sales via reseller but not on an official presence, can we sell on Taobao without a local license? No, don't do that, because Taobao really looks very unprofessional. So you will just look like another reseller. You won't be able to stand out as a brand if you're selling on Taobao. So either you're ready to move to Tmall, you move directly to Tmall, or you create a WeChat store or another type of social store in order to sell. But there is no point in a brand creating a store on Taobao. It will look bad, and it's just not a good strategy. You will just not be differentiated compared to other resellers. Philip is asking, C2C, do you need a Chinese bank account for WeChat? You can't really do C2C via WeChat. You can do C2C via Taobao using Taobao Worldwide, but you will need to be Chinese, not necessarily with a Chinese bank account, I think, but you will need a Chinese ID, and you will need to meet some weird criteria, like living outside China, but coming to China once in a while, so you can meet the criteria in order to sell on Taobao Worldwide. I'm not sure what is the details of that because our clients usually don't use this method. Do platforms like Tmall and Douyin are used for luxury products like natural diamonds, etc.? Tmall is used for luxury products. A lot of people, like people can buy Lamborghinis or Tesla or whatever on Tmall. But not Douyin. Douyin is used for very cheap products. Usually the products which are sold on Douyin are below 200 RMB, and you can see a very clear curve. If you look at, we wrote an article about that. If you look at the price of a product and the return on investment of campaigns, the more expensive a product is, the lower the return on investment. Claire Chen is asking, which WeChat store platform would you recommend? Yodzan. So it depends. If you're outside of China and selling cross-border, I would recommend our own platform because it's cross-border. It has English interface. It integrates with Shopify and Magento. It is the only platform which integrates with Shopify. So yeah, cross-border, choose WeChat. If it's not cross-border, if it's local, yes, I would definitely recommend Yodzan. They are the best platform for WeChat stores selling from mainland China. So if you have a Chinese business license, by all means, I recommend Yodzan. There is an agency that told you that Tmall store and Xiaohongshu can be linked together, but TP Partner says it can't be. Who is right? So yeah, you can't create direct links from Xiaohongshu to a Tmall store. That's correct. But you have some other integration between Tmall and Xiaohongshu, such as the fact that the Xiaohongshu content can appear on Taobao on some social parts of Taobao. So both are right, but it's true that you can't, from a Xiaohongshu post, you cannot create a link which is gonna deep link to a Taobao or Tmall product. Do you need a Chinese entity to create a WeChat store? What about ICP? No, you don't. You can create with WeChat. In this case, we process payments via cross-border payments and help with cross-border logistics. And you don't need to have ICP because it's a cross-border mini program that we would set up for you. I think I answered most of the questions. There are still some outstanding, I'm sorry, but I don't want to overwhelm people with too many answers. Just Yannick is asking, is there an integrated index that takes all the social media into consideration? Not that I know of. You would have to do it manually using all of the indexes that I mentioned. Yeah, so I think we covered most of the main questions. Sorry for the people who I didn't have time to answer yet. Let me just check what's going on in the chat, because some people are writing in the chat asking questions where I said that people should use the other. Yeah, it's a bit too much. Like, so I'm gonna skip these questions too, I'm afraid, because we won't have time to go through all of them. And I think I'm gonna close the webinar now because it's been around an hour. Just to summarize next steps, you will all get the slides from this webinar. So you will get the links to all of these platforms. There are some links which were missing, I realized as I went through the slides. So I will make sure to add all of these, including the WeChat Index mini program. So you can just scan it and get the data. I will also upload this on YouTube, so I will send you the link. So if you have anything which is unclear, you want to listen to it again, you can do so. And if you don't want to do your own audit and you need some help with that, you can reach out to us. There is an email on this last slide, info@workthechat.com. And you can reach out to us and we can help you with the audit. So if somehow you're confused about the process and your brand has a lot of mentions and you're not sure how to aggregate all of that and get a sense of all of that, and maybe you want to do some competitor analysis, you can reach out. I'd like to make a clear last plug. If you also want much more in-depth data, you might want to reach out to a market research company. And on this, I know one which is very good, which is called Daxue Consulting, DAXUE. We worked with them with a lot of our clients, and Balenciaga and others. We recommended to them and they were quite satisfied. So I would recommend them in case you want to go beyond this. And we don't specialize in looking for data. We specialize in helping companies sell. So if you're looking for a focus group, more in-depth research, then you might want to reach out to Daxue, yeah, DAXUE Consulting. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for the people who stayed up late or woke up early. I know that it's hard to accommodate everyone in terms of a time slot, and feel free to write to us and let us know what you would like to talk about next. We try to keep coming up with fresh ideas for webinars. Bye-bye, everyone.